Hi everyone, it's so great to be here, especially on Earth Day. We say at 1% for the Planet, we don't really celebrate Earth Day because for us, we celebrate our home planet and try to make a positive impact every day. But we're happy to be here nonetheless. My name is Kira Murphy and I'm a Senior Account Manager at 1% for the Planet. I've been at 1% for about the past 3 years, but I've been working in the sustainability space for the past decade in markets all around the world. I used to lead sustainability for a very large brewing company down in Australia and studied public policy in graduate school. But really happy to be here to share more about 1% for the Planet, what we do, and really happy to have Art here from Peak Design to share from the member perspective. So I'll pass it over to Raghav next to introduce himself.
Thank you, Kira, and thank you everyone for having us. I'm Raghav Dari, he, him pronouns, and I've been with 1% for the Planet for about 2.5 years, and I am one of the half of our staff is remote, so me and Kira are both based in the Bay Area. So if you ever want to have coffee later, please send a message. I've been in the nonprofit space for the last 6-ish years, and prior to that, I was in the space of capitalism and environmental impact intersecting. And super happy and grateful to be here in your company. Art.
Hi everybody. Hi everybody, thanks for coming out. My name is Art Bijay. I'm the head of design at Peak Design. I'm from San Francisco. Originally I grew up in the North Bay. I've been back here for 18 years or something like that. I went to San Francisco State to study industrial design. I've done a couple of events here at CCA, actually doing portfolio reviews and stuff like that. But 12 years at Peak Design, pretty heads down, just in the trenches building product for a long time. A lot of frequent flyer miles, as you can imagine. And really excited to talk a little bit about sustainability and 1% for the Planet and how that works into our strategy.
Great, thank you both. I'm going to pass it over to Raghav. We have a question to kick us off.
Thank you. So the first question, just to get a little sense of the room and who we are, and I guess even for you all as well in the space together that we're going to share for the next hour or so. Since it's Earth Day, let's talk about it. How optimistic are you about people coming together to take real action on climate change? So with a show of hands, we have 4 options. A, pretty optimistic. B, sort of. C, not really. D, climate change. So with the show of hands, how many feel A is their feeling today? Okay, there are no wrong answers. All good. How many, with a show of hands, feel B is what they're thinking?
What's the time? How long was that?
As of today, how do you feel? Okay, quite a few hands. C, not really. Okay, that is all good, that is all accepted. And last option, D, climate change. Really? Okay, thank you for participating.
That definitely helps kind of set the tone in terms of getting that feeling in terms of where people are at, in terms of climate change and how we're taking action as a global community. So hopefully as part of our presentation today, you leave with maybe a little bit more optimism or a little bit more hope for the future, because I know we feel that every day in the work that we do, which I'm incredibly grateful for. In terms of who we are, 1% for the Planet, who has heard of 1% for the Planet before, has seen a 1% for the Planet logo on a product or website or something like that before?
Let's keep the product.
Oh, perfect. So 1% for the Planet is a global organization that exists to ensure that our planet and future generations thrive. We inspire businesses and individuals to support environmental solutions through our membership and everyday actions. We make environmental giving easy and effective through partnership advising, impact storytelling, and third-party certification. So I'll talk more about our origin story, that when you see the 1% for the Planet logo on a product or on a service provider's website or something like that, that means that they're a member of 1% for the Planet, and that they're committed to give back 1% of their annual sales revenue to environmental nonprofits, or what we call environmental partners in our network. And we check the receipts. So we are the organization or the third-party certifier that's holding those businesses accountable to actually do what they say they're going to do. So back in 2002, we were founded by Yvon Chouinard. Does anyone know who Yvon Chouinard is? So he's the founder of Patagonia. We're very fortunate to have him as a thought leader in the environmental and business of forest for good movement. But he was on the banks of the Madison River with his good friend Craig Matthews, who is the founder of Blue Ribbon Files, who's a renowned fly fisherman and conservationist. And they were talking about kind of what was wrong in the world. Back in 2002, if we take us back a little bit, it was pre-iPhones. There weren't a whole lot of businesses who were talking about like responsible business and all the things that they were doing. And both Yvon and Craig thought there's gotta be more businesses and business leaders out in the world that kind of wanna do right by the planet and give back. How do we make that easy? And how do we make giving back to the planet as easy or as fundamental as you think about paying your rent as a business owner or paying your employees? Because you have an impact on the planet, should be thinking about how you give back to the planet and support all the amazing organizations, frontline activists, and things that are happening on the ground. And that was part of the idea. At that time, too, you were seeing businesses, there wasn't a lot of resources out there in terms of how to do the right thing. One of the things that I think about is I heard Yvon share at one point that he saw a product, maybe it was a shampoo bottle or something, that said 5% of our profits support the ocean. And he kind of called BS on that and said, well, 5% of profits, that could be $0 if you're not a profitable company. How do I know this is a profitable company? And what does 5% really mean? And to the oceans, like where is that money going? What organizations is that money going to? And so that was part of the thinking around 1% for the planet, is how do you kind of go to those businesses who have like good intention, who want to do the right thing, who want to speak to the conscious consumer, but don't really have the accountability partner or the resources to go on and make all those right decisions. And so that idea is really about preventing greenwashing. And going back kind of even farther, greenwashing has kind of been a thing over the past few decades. Kind of started to sprout up in the 1980s with companies here and there shouting out about one thing that they're doing, even though they were doing a lot of bad. Greenwashing picked up a lot of steam when like big oil companies were coming out with these huge PR campaigns, kind of talking about, being a responsible company when they were really doing a lot of damage to the planet. Like 2004 to 2006, BP was the one who coined like the personal carbon footprint. You have this like huge oil company doing all this destruction, and then they're the ones saying, actually, you, individual person, should be taking responsibility. And so fast forward to today, like 1% for the planet, like we've been around for just over 20 years. So much has changed. So it's amazing how Yvonne Chenard and Craig Matthews had this foresight of like, we need to come in and address all these companies that are trying to do the right thing, but need an organization like 1% for the Planet to kind of get them on the right path and to create like real lasting change. So how does it work? So businesses join 1% for the Planet and commit to that 1% of sales revenue annually to environmental nonprofit organizations in our network. From there, they look to partner. So we help businesses identify partners that align with their business goals and values. So both Raghav and in both of our roles, we work with a lot of businesses as account managers to advise on giving strategies and identify partners and to see how that business, through their 1% commitment, can make the greatest impact. And then our businesses give directly to the environmental partners of their choice in our network. And they can do that in a lot of different ways. We have a flexible giving model. So half of a member's 1% commitment can be met through monetary donations. So that's direct monetary donations made to the environmental partner of their choice. And then the other half of their commitment could be made through non-monetary or other flexible giving options like volunteer time of their staff, in-kind product or service donations. So sometimes that looks like a website developer in our network donating their time to build a new website for an environmental partner or nonprofit. And then certify. So certification is kind of the core part of what we do. But every single year, like I mentioned earlier, we're checking the receipts. So businesses go through our certification process where they submit their proof of sales revenue. They show us exactly what they made for that year. That calculates their 1%. And then they provide us proof of all their donations. So, an actual donation receipt of like, hey, I donated, on behalf of my business, $5,000 to Surfrider Foundation. We make sure that all lines up. We make sure that each business in our network is actually fulfilling their commitment, and they get to continue to use our logo and continue to be members, hopefully for the lifetime of their business. Once members certify, that's again where they're amplifying their commitment, they're sharing about the work that they're doing, they're using the 1% for the Planet logo, and that helps our movement grow as consumers and people are learning more about 1% for the Planet. And a lot of businesses out there join 1% for Planet because they see the logo on a product, and we believe it's something that consumers could really trust because, again, we know that every single member in our network is certifying that impact. In terms of what that looks like today, we're just over 5,000 business members, about 5,200 at the moment. And then in addition to business members, the other part of our network is our environmental partners. So that stat isn't up here, but we have 6,000 different environmental partners around the world. And that network is in 112 different countries. In terms of our business member network, 57% of that are businesses based outside of the US or internationally. We've grown pretty substantially around the world over the past few years, which is very exciting. And that makeup of businesses, it's large publicly traded businesses, it's small sole proprietorships. We have businesses of every single size in over 60 different industries. So it's really been exciting to see our network diversify. And out of that, those 5,200 business members, we have over just around 150,000 unique donations. So out of our total impact, there's a lot of individual donations that are kind of signing up to create that greater impact.
So taking a cue from all the business members, like over 5,000 in the network, this is just a little bit snapshot of the kind of members that you could find. Household names, some names maybe you haven't heard of, but the thing that is common in all of these is that if you see the logo on any product, then you know that that business is committing to donate 1% of their revenue to verified environmental organizations. So it's verified giving to verified organizations. And the great thing about the network is that the businesses are in like over 60 categories. So typically, folks might think that the 1% for the Planet Network is more so in the outdoor space, or maybe perhaps some athletic wear, but actually it's everything from household goods like kitchenware to cosmetics to alcoholic spirits to just banking and even biotechnology companies. So the breadth of the business network is really wide. And you can always go to our website to find businesses that you might be interested in supporting. On the other side of the network is the environmental partners. So when businesses are donating their 1%, and when we say that it's verified organizations, we mean that the businesses are donating that 1% to organizations within the network. And that's over 6,700 nonprofits around the world. How do you define a good deed? That's really hard. There are so many ways to do something good. And so what we have done is try to categorize it a little bit. So these four are our impact areas. It's rights to nature, resilient communities, conservation and restoration, and just economies. Within each impact area, we have 4 subdivisions that go specifically into those broader impact areas of how we can categorize impact work of the nonprofits in the network, and then try to also streamline and measure the kind of change that's happening on the ground. Each of these categories align to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal targets as well. So we're trying to use already established frameworks in how to define our own framework and not doing something from the scratch on the ground. Reinventing the wheel, as the people say. So in essence, many times when people think environmental impact, they might think planting a tree, or maybe going to your beach and cleaning plastic litter. All of those are fantastic things. We think of environmental impact in things that are clearly tied to nature. But many times, like with most things in life, it's actually not that simple, and there's a whole lot of overlap going. So for example, if you feel like, I want to stop the deforestation in Africa, perhaps in the Central Africa or actually the Northwest, where a lot of the cocoa from the world is being grown. So Ivory Coast, 60% of the cocoa comes from West Africa. To stop deforestation there, the first instinct might be, let's plant trees. That's true. But the farmers who live there actually deliberately cut down forests in pristine preserved areas so that they can plant cocoa beans. Because cocoa pods planted in fertile, protected forests grows far faster, and the cocoa produced is far better quality. So in order to maximize the production of cocoa, they voluntarily and unwillingly, but have to destroy their own forests. They don't want to do that. They are the local stewards of their land, and they want to preserve it and protect it to the best of their ability. So when, for example, Kira is talking about partnership advising, and we have a business member who's asking us, we want to stop deforestation in West Africa, which are some organizations who are doing good work to do that. We might not say actually tree planting organizations. We might actually say that maybe some poverty alleviating organizations could help you actually get to the root problem and still achieve the same impact. Combine that with maybe supporting some other organizations who are planting on the ground. Maybe also some education organizations who can talk locally about education, maybe mixed crop farming so that you could do both things, have forests and have tasty cocoa. So the intersection of impact is actually in the connections, and it's not so siloed. When we think about the environment and impact, it's all very interconnected. And so far, with all of the businesses and nonprofits in the network, in the 21 plus years since we've been around, we have certified more than $622 million. That is huge. And it would not be possible unless consumers just like the one in this room had chosen to buy a product that had that 1% logo. So this is not businesses doing the deed, this is all of you doing the deed. This is how nonprofits are able to get this money and do things on the ground. Sometimes we might not ever really get to hear the full story of what that 1% did, but just know that there are a bunch of people making sure that that money is going to verified places. And this number is thanks to all of you.
Great. So a lot of what we talked about, core part of what we try to do is smart environmental giving through all of that partnership advising. And we're constantly trying to evolve what we do and think about how we can get more money in the hands of all these great environmental partners doing this important work. Less than 3% of philanthropic dollars support environmental organizations. And so that's another part of why we do what we do, is to try and get more money in these hands. And part of how we're doing that is through one of our new products is the Planet Impact Fund. And so this is a way for large donors who are normally making large philanthropic investments or donations into donor-advised funds, for that money to go into the Planet Impact Fund that gets invested in sustainable investments so the pot can grow, and then we distribute money from that fund to environmental partners in our network. So again, the way that we thought about membership when we first started 1% for the Planet, to think about the money that's generated from doing business on the planet, using the planet's resources, taking some of that money and reinvesting it to support environmental partners. We're trying to think, where is some of that other money locked up so that we can expedite some of this change. And a lot of that is kind of stored away in donor-advised funds, where money is actually not getting distributed, but large donors are getting the tax break. So we're tackling that head-on through the Planet Impact Fund so that we can not only have that money going in to make sustainable investments that doesn't harm the planet, but also so that we can unlock some of that money so that environmental partners can get to work right away. So there's more information about that along with membership on our website, but another exciting way we're trying to increase smart environmental giving for anyone making philanthropic investments. All of this kind of is summed up in our theory of change, that when you have an action that's smart and simple, you repeat it again and again and again, we can create change. I think one of the things that really inspires me is that when we're certifying giving, right now is certification season, so we're seeing a lot of donations get recorded, and we're approving a lot of those donations. And the other day I approved a donation that I think was for $5. And sometimes I'm approving a donation that's $500,000. And so seeing how all of that has added up over the first 20 years to be, $500 million from all of those business members all around the world is pretty incredible, and hopefully reshaping philanthropy and how we see it. Certification is becoming more and more important. So amongst the 1% for the Planet logo, when you're looking at a lot of products like Peak Design and others, you'll see us amongst other third-party certifiers, like certified B corporations, fair trade certified, vegan, FSC, Regenerative Organic Certified, there's a lot out there. And 1% for the Planet, we are a connector. So a lot of these other third-party certifiers or organizations are within the 1% for the Planet network. So when we're talking to businesses about the value of becoming a 1% for the Planet member, one of those things is that the work that they're doing to certify their environmental material impact of their products and stuff kind of can be wrapped up into their 1% commitment, which is good. And these are becoming more and more important, kind of if we're looking at the environment that we're in today in terms of greenwashing. And I support a lot of our members across the European network, and the government is starting to get involved, and there's a new greenwashing directive in the EU that's going to be holding businesses accountable to not make claims that are unsubstantiated by third-party certifiers. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that changes things, where any businesses that have a good intention are going to have to work with a third party to really hold them accountable like we're doing.
So with all of these big ideas and frameworks, it might be helpful to try to bring that to life by talking about some case studies. And the following few slides has some business members who have tapped into different aspects of their partnership with 1% for the Planet. And we'll just go over a little smattering of what brought those companies and what their unique approach to it is. One of the biggest things that we are at the heart of it is a third-party certification. We are the antidote to greenwashing. For those that might not know, greenwashing is when businesses kind of make claims about doing more good than they actually are. So when you have a third-party, unbiased certifier, consumers can trust that, okay, they're not, complicit, they're just saying the thing, and it creates a sense of trust for consumers. And so a majority of the members who join us actually join for the credibility, especially if it's an industry where it is kind of a little bit rife with greenwashing. And some members, like Avocado Green Mattress, who makes mattresses from sustainable materials, they actually go a little bit step further and have a whole bunch of other certifications like B Corp, Climate Neutral, FSC, so that consumers can instantly associate that brand with a kind of overall image and impression. Even if they don't know what every single certification does, it's becoming part of just building that trust and credibility. One of the other aspects that members like to really tap into is a growing study that 90% of employees who believe that their company makes a strong positive impact on society plan to stay with their employer. And this, I think, really comes to life because this is a great retention tool as well. I don't know about you, but when I was job searching, I wanted my day-to-day to actually make a difference because 5 days of the week we actually put it into the places where we work. So you're on average spending more time of your life into your work than you might otherwise. So you want it to make a positive difference. And it turns out that a lot of the people looking for jobs are actually looking for the same thing. They want the places where they work to actually do something and mean for something. So when businesses have third-party certifications like 1% and other nonprofit partnerships, the employees actually feel like they are a part of something much larger than themselves or larger than the sum of their parts. So Cell Signaling Technology is a biotechnology company. They make a lot of scientific testing instruments, and scientific instruments like lab work and testing kits are kind of wasteful by their very nature. There's a lot of plastic, there's a lot of one-time disposals of gloves and sanitation kits. So while they cannot necessarily change how the industry is working right away, Cell Signaling Technology does a great job of having a really diverse giving program and community grants that other local organizations can tap into. And one of the things that they like to do is actually also tap into the staff to make those decisions, which type of organizations that we should donate part of our 1% too. So the 1% partnership can be a gateway into really meaningfully engaging the staff to do something more than staff might even think that they ever had a choice to. So they get to be part of that change more directly. Volunteering, great way to bring that culture to life. And so like Kira was saying, any volunteering time that businesses, staff do with any of the 6,000 nonprofits in the network, those hours wrap up to a dollar amount, and that dollar also contributes to their 1% giving goal. So it's many little things that add up to that 1%, and volunteering is one of them. One of the great ways to bring that spirit of a company culture to life is through the volunteering part. Greenwashing, more and more people are getting aware of what greenwashing is, and they're skeptical of businesses in general. A newer term that actually is less talked about is also green hushing. So conversely to greenwashing, green hushing is when businesses are actually a little bit shy to talk about their sustainability work because they don't want to be called out for making really boastful claims when they cannot substantiate it. So on the flip end is businesses who are actually doing the good work, but because they don't want to enter into scrutiny, they're too hesitant to talk about it. So whether it's greenwashing or green hushing, the idea of working with a third-party certification is that you don't have to overthink it. We are verifying those claims for you and allowing you to be honest and transparent with your messaging. And OXO is a housewares and home goods company that has partnered with a whole plethora of nonprofits to meet their sustainability commitments, all tackling greenwashing in their own unique ways, all of them measuring up to quantifiable impact metrics like pounds of food given, acres of land converted to organic farming, and easy call-outs like that. So those were just a little bit of a handful of our business members in the network who are doing really unique things and how they want to engage with the partnership. There is really no one right way. All rivers lead to the sea, and they do what they can for the ocean. One such member we have in the network is Peak Design. Peak Design has been in the network since 2016. And since that time, they've done some really amazing things. Not only have they launched nonprofits, product trading and recirculating programs, fair trade certified factories, and a whole bunch of other things. The really incredible thing about Peak Design, and I'm not just saying it because Art is here, but my favorite thing about them is that if you take a look at their impact report on their website, you will see that they're really humble. They know where they are, and they don't make claims about more or less than what they can do from where they sit in the entire supply chain. They are calling it for what it is, and that's why their impact report is actually called In Progress Report, because it isn't about a destination, but more about the journey. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on our very special guest, Art.
Thank you. I just get a sense of the audience here. Who here are designers or design students or involved in making product or want to make physical goods in any way, shape, or form? All right, cool, great. My people. So I'm going to talk about my journey through Peak Design a little bit. Maybe I'll just talk about Peak Design first a little bit, and I'll get into that. So we started 2010, and via Kickstarter. Basically, our founder, Peter Daring, a very good friend of mine, he invented this silly little thing called a capture camera clip, and he had it in his head for a number of years, and he hated his job as a construction management for a really gigantic construction firm that builds hospitals and stuff like that. And he wanted to be his own boss, and so he took this weird little idea that he had, and he quit his job, and he started bussing tables at Delfina Pizza to pay his rent in the meantime, and I think got a $4,000 loan from his parents or something like that to help. And I made this little aluminum clip that clips onto your backpack strap and lets you carry a camera on a backpack strap instead of having a camera strap in a backpack, which gets pretty cumbersome when the camera's flopping around all over the place. So it's a pretty novel invention. It's really like not a product category before that. He launched it on Kickstarter. At the time, it was the second most funded Kickstarter of all time. I joined the company immediately after that. I was the first hire, second employee, something like that. And I came in as a designer to help out with like some packaging stuff and some customer service stuff. And I mean, it was just him at a desk over here in the dog patch, basically trying to figure out what to do next. And then from there, we've slowly built a whole world of products. We are in the photography space still very heavily, but travel and outdoor, and we do a bunch of mobile products now as well. That's been, I think we have 75 full-time employees, and close to, if you put like contractors and part-time people, it's closer to 150, and then a network of upwards of probably 5,000 people who are constantly making peak design stuff around the world as we speak. So pretty decent, just like scale of business and stuff, about $100 million annual revenue. When we first started doing products, I think just building products is a monumentally difficult task to build anything. It's just, I can't overstate that. I'm like in the midst of hell on this 3-year-long project right now that I can't believe we're like still doing, and I've been doing this for a long time, so it never gets easier. It's always hard. And sustainability, like trying to work sustainability into that when you're just trying to ship something out the door is a huge, complex factor in all of that. And I think pretty quickly we realized that we are not experts in it. And despite like all of the design lecture, I mean, I'm very sympathetic for anyone who's in like an industrial design program, because like when I was a student, it was like hammered into us that like the designers are going to make the change, and you need to be super educated in all these like new materials, and what about cork, and pineapple leather, or whatever the hell new buzzy material is coming out. And I think just the reality of building products is so much more wild and out of control, and like picking the right material is just one little piece of the puzzle, and just generally unregulated, and it is like such the Wild West out there when it comes to what it means to build a sustainable product. So I just like wanted to say, like, take a breath, it's okay. Like, I don't think the like designers are like at the forefront of solving sustainability. I actually think it's more supply chain issues and like policy and intake systems for waste management. These things are actually like where the real rubber hits the road. Not to take anything away from the impact of building products, it's really serious business. And I, have a lot of sleepless nights with the amount of crap I've put into the world, that's for sure. But let's see. So very quickly we realized we are not experts in sustainability, and we realized it was going to be. We realized no one really was, because it was like in 2016, or whenever we started really thinking about this, 2012 or something like that. Like this is early days in building more environmentally conscious products. In a sense, it's been going on for a long time, but in this like phase of it, the kind of Patagonia phase of building sustainable products. So we realized the general workflow for building sustainable products at that point was like all about impact reduction. It's like switching to recycled materials, reducing this chemical. And we kind of were like looking at like the end game of what that meant for material reductions and flat pack or whatever. There's a million different changes you can make to your products to optimize for impact. But we realized there's like juicy low-hanging fruit that you can do, but ultimately there is no end goal. there is impact in anything that we're making here. There's energy inputs, there's chemical inputs, there's material inputs, there's people inputs into all of these things, and they all have an impact. So rather than going through this reduction exercise and then thinking about like, okay, and then there's some impact at the end and maybe we'll offset that or give something or do some project to try and offset that end impact, we said, what if we flip that on its head and we do the offset first while we're working towards building, some endless goal of more sustainable products. So we did that in two ways. One was 1% for the planet. 1% for the planet, obviously, but what it does is, I love 1% for the planet because it's such a business, such a capitalist-focused nonprofit. It's amazing, in that it speaks the language of, it speaks the language of the people who are in the room who are ultimately going to make the decisions about these, which is like the leadership of a company who have a lot of different stakeholders that they're trying to do and a lot of different people that they're trying to keep employed and trying to keep the thing from imploding. And it basically, they can quickly do their calculation on like how much this is going to cost them, and they don't have to do any of the back end work of like explaining to people like what it all means. It comes baked in with that certification process, with the auditing and everything that you get with that. So we did 1% for the planet, and then a couple of years later, and so as we're working on our things, we really wanted to focus on the climate aspects of things, because that seemed like, even if you built like the most perfect sustainable product in the world, then there still would be an energy impact for that. So we wanted to give to more climate-based offset mechanisms in order to recognize that as early as possible. So we actually started, you saw some of those climate neutral logos up there. Pete, who's the founder of Peak Design, also founded Climate Neutral, and Climate Neutral is basically set out to be sort of like the Fair Trade certified, but for climate offsets. And so the idea there is it's trying to encourage other companies to take the approach that we have, which is offsetting first instead of last. And that was born from like a lot of discussions with like consultants or like sustainability teams at The Gap or the North Face or whatever, these like VF Corp, like giant companies where you have like 12 extremely well-paid people who are paying a bunch of money to a bunch of consultants to try and figure out how to reduce their waste stuff. But ultimately, when offsets came into the conversation, it was always like, oh, but all of this stuff first. And it was like, well, there is impact now, so shouldn't it be that first? So that's our approach, is trying to reduce impact first through 1% for the planet and climate neutral, and a long, messy process of reduction. I can get into some of the other, let's go down the list here, this beautiful slide here they've prepared for me, thank you very much. Factories. We took a little bit of a different approach with our factories. We worked with like some pretty, rather than just like going out and trying to find like the one factory that it was doing it right, we're like scrappy startup culture company, less so these days, we've gotten a little bit bigger, but at this point in time, we were small and it was hard to get these bigger factories to pay attention to us and to give us some priority. So rather than like finding this like gem, apex, alpha, sustainability factory, whatever, like the top tier factories in this world, we wanted to find other scrappy factory owners who were kind of in our situation and find partners who wanted to build their business with us and build their business in a way that we could shape it and form it the way that we thought that it should be done. So we found a very small factory. They didn't even actually have a factory. They were contracting with another factory, but so they were just buying line time on that factory basically. And we kind of made a business arrangement with them to, you're going to be our guys, but you gotta, we're going to hold you guys to a pretty high standard, not right now, but we're going to be working towards this. And what we really liked about that is over time, rather than just like going, especially with some of these contractor factories that we were initially working with, we'd go in there and be like, oof, we get in an audit, like this is rough in here, okay? We get an audit back and it'd be like all kinds of problems, like chemical problems, personnel problems, like hour problems, all kinds of things that like you walk into a like bad factory and you walked into a good factory, and it's actually like a little bit difficult to tell. Like I think most people in this room, if you've never done into like a large scale manufacturing thing, you can walk into a really beautiful like top tier factory and you'd probably be horrified because capitalism, am I right? And it's just the scale of it is like outrageous. So what we wanted to do is basically, rather than these like factories that weren't passing their certifications and everything, be like, we think we can actually have more impact with working with these guys and bringing them up, rather than if we just said, ugh, this is like an icky factory, we're gonna like go over here to these guys, and then this factory like being an icky factory for whoever else doesn't really care as much as we do. So that was our approach to factories. We'd find these smaller partners, and then we'd get them certified through a whole bunch of certifying bodies. I'm not gonna bore you guys with more certifying bodies. I think that we've done enough of that today. But to work on a whole host of issues to bring up their standard, to meet our standard. So it was serving us in that they were heavily indebted to like, because we were like committing a huge amount of our business to them, and like, you know, in some cases, I think we've built 4 different factories at this point that are dedicated to making our things that didn't exist before. We built the first Fair Trade certified factory in Vietnam. It's all solar powered. They've got a sweet like live work situation going on at soccer field. It's awesome, and all of that was because we like wanted to invest in these people and not just like go to the highest bidder. It's not the right term, but go to the top tier factories that already existed. So we feel like we've done a lot of good in that sense on the factory end of things, and then you know, Fair Trade certified and B Corp certification and Blue Sign certification, which not that many people know about, but it has to do with chemistry and how you handle different chemicals throughout the whole supply chain process. These are all things that we've worked on over the years, getting into materials. We've done a lot of swapping out materials for recycled options, which for most brands I feel like is like the top tier thing. It's like, we used 62 plastic bottles in this pair of pants or whatever. For us, it's like, I always get the feeling on that where it's just like, they make it seem like they're like in their like factory or whatever, like grinding up plastic bottles, and like at the end comes this pair of pants, but in reality, like all they're doing is like checking the box for like, yes, we will pay 8% more for the recycled version of this material that this giant Korean or Taiwanese yarn suppliers like already make. Like they didn't have anything to do with it. Unless you're like Patagonia and like helped like spur some of that stuff like 15 years ago or whatever. Like, tons of material reduction stuff, chemistry stuff. PFAS removal is like the biggest one, which is largely regulatory based. I'm super excited about that came down. Equity, a lot of our 1% for the planet stuff goes out to that. I talked about some of the factory work in there. We do a lot of giving with photo nonprofits and underserved communities, and talk about that forever. Advocacy work, we've done a bunch of, we have like a really amazing video team that does like all this hilarious marketing content, but we use them for a lot of work to do. We've produced a number of documentaries, we've sponsored a number of film festivals, trying to spur a bunch of different grassroots environmental stuff. Dam removal and wetland preservation, it's all over the place. It's 12 years of this stuff. So, yeah, kind of a lot, but yeah, I'm looking forward to quick Q&A, so.
Awesome, thank you, Art. And we'll go through some of these last slides quickly and then get to Q&A. But a few things that I think are super important that Art spoke about as part of the intention with 1% for the planet is that every single business on the planet has some type of environmental impact. Whether you're the Patagonias of the world that are kind of setting the new standard, or if your business is on the very start of that journey and not doing a lot of things great. And Yvonne Chouinard wanted to create this model to say that all of those businesses should kind of be paying a tax for the resources that they're using. to make money. And so, yeah, to Art's point, we're kind of working within the system to try to make it better in terms of capitalism and turning it on its head. That's why we're doing innovative things like the Planet Impact Fund. And it's great to see businesses like Peak Design on that journey who, as they're trying to make a greater positive material impact in terms of how they're designing their products, they're giving back at each step. And so there's so many amazing stories of different businesses who are doing that approach. And also in terms of like the fair trade work and the new factories, a lot of businesses giving strategies are looking at the material impact of their products. And that's all kind of coming together and how they're thinking really strategically about their partnerships. And so we're excited for what the next 20 years is going to look like. Could be really scary, but could bring us a lot of hope in terms of what we can do as a global community. And it's really going to take everyone in this room to try and make all those decisions and have them add up to the change we want to see. Our goal within the next couple of years is to get to $1 billion in total certified impact or giving, so doubling our impact to date. When I think about people who donate $1 billion, it's a lot of time, like, no pun intended, the top 1% making those decisions about where all that money is going to go. Maybe they have an awesome group of advisors, but our network has kind of democratized those massive donations where we have hundreds of thousands of people making those decisions in terms of where that money goes to add up to be $1 billion. So we're really excited to see where that's going to take us and all the impact that's going to make. For the farmers in northwestern Uganda, I was lucky enough to visit Uganda earlier in the year to see some of the impact with some girls' education programs that one of our business members is funding. And it's incredible. There's so many stories of impact within the network. That's really inspiring. So I encourage you to ask us questions, but go to our website, read all the stories of impact, so you know when you see the logo, the type of work that you're supporting. This quick graph kind of just shows how we're going to get to our 1 billion goal. But again, it's all the donations from all of our business members and then innovating with things like the Planet Impact Fund. But we're accelerating because we know that the planet needs it. And again, it's how change happens. Simple, smart, together, repeat again and again and again. All of our business members, they're not just doing one post a year that says, Happy Earth Day, you get 10% off and we're gonna give $1. They're making this 1% commitment day in and day out. Donations are coming to us every single day where we're getting to certify impact, which says a lot about those business leaders that are making those decisions to commit to 1% for the planet, but I think says a lot about the world we want to see. There's a QR code to go just to our website, 1%forplanet.org, but yeah, excited to kick off Q&A so we can answer any questions that you all have. Thank you. Okay, first question, ready to go.
I've got to go get on a call with a factory in Asia in 5 minutes and to sell some toys to Walmart and try to bring sustainability in there. And I teach sustainability here. We have all these practices, but it's really hard. It's really, really hard. It feels incremental. Progress, not perfection. Right, so I get that, and I feel like we're kind of making it up as we go, and it's like, is this better, is it worse? And we can do a life cycle analysis, and is it really better, are we counting this right? So I guess what I would ask you guys to do is like open source the design components so that we can learn what you're doing and teach it to the students who are in the room, who are, ultimately all these designers are in the room and helping make those choices, incremental or great. And so share what you guys are learning, and then part of it is like, can your organization, can part of that 1% go to evangelizing and like teach all of us the tricks, right? Because the tricks are learned, I think, from doing, right? It's that incremental process, right? And it's, and we all have different experiences, but they're not shared, and I don't think they're broadly they're not broadly known. So it's a little bit, I don't know if there's a question in there, if I'm just waving. But that would be great, you know, to bring it back in, and then we'll seed a whole new generation of people who can really make this impact ultimately. So I don't know, quick thoughts before my call in 3 minutes. Sorry.
One of the things that I've thought about a lot, and it's currently posted on my desk, is echo over ego. And I think a lot of time in the sustainability space for a while, like, and we've kind of seen this shift in the past decade or so, there is so much of like evangelizing the businesses at the top who seemingly looked like they had all the answers and they were doing all of the right things, but they were keeping like those secrets close to their chest, and people are like, oh, how do we be the Patagonia of our industry as a competitive advantage? And I've been seeing more and more and more, the ego is still there for some, but a lot of businesses start to shed that ego. And we've seen like a lot of B corporations that have implemented like a lot of different policies or systems, like open source them on their website. They're like, screw just an impact or a progress report, like here it all is. It's, you know, on our website, ready to dig through, and here's a direct line to our sustainability manager if you have questions. And so I think it's so important to think about like that ecosystem and how we can all support each other, because one of the things that I love about 1% is it's like pretty easy to join. We do risk assessments in terms of brand reputation, or, you know, if Chevron called tomorrow and wanted to join 1% for the planet, that'd be a pretty serious conversation. But it's pretty easy to join. You make the commitment, we hold you accountable, and you make that impact. And you see businesses start to change because of the community that they're part of and all the things that they're learning, or competitors recommend that each other. They're like, screw 1% for the planet being competitive advantage in terms of we're the only one, the only brand that does this, that has the 1% for the planet logo. Like, let's just get rid of the competition and all do it. And so it's been really inspiring to see that, and definitely encourage more and more business members to do the same. But yeah, Peak Design does a great job at like sharing, and like Raghav said, being humble and not making it look like the perfect journey.
Will you come and share with us your technique? Or can you?
I'd be happy to come and chat in the classroom setting for sure. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head though, of like one of my biggest frustrations with working on the impact reduction product side of things is like, when you talk to people who specialize in sustainability, on the supply chain side of things or the product side of things, like the lack of consensus that they're able to come to about like steps 1, 2, 3 in terms of like don't you like use this material first, use this material second, or like it's small, you know, even just like avoid using aluminum at all cost, or any of those. Like those should be pretty straightforward answers that we can come to, and it's actually one of the things that like makes me the most hopeful and also the most like mortified at the future of all this, is just our like, if we can come to consensus on those things, I think we can have like real change. But the fact that we have yet been unable to do that, just like on my side of things, like using tools like the Higg Index and talking to various people, it's just like, man, polyester is an incredible material. Like the impact of it is like so low once you're using like a recycled version of it, especially if it's post-consumer. And like from the consumer side of things, it's just like, now the biggest thing is just like all plastic is bad. And it really depends on like what your, this is why like if you're in sustainability strategy stuff, you're, as a consultant, you're always talking about like, oh, we need to look at your various stakeholders and like, you know, figure out what like sustainability story works for your brand. And I'm just like, like if we can't figure out that 1, 2, 3 thing, that's a problem. And yeah.
Well, let's collaborate.
Let's do it.
I gotta jump on. Thank you so much.
Best
Sorry.
of luck.
Sorry to appreciate it.
But yeah, it's definitely an issue when all of that leads to like a paralysis of like,
oh, this is just like too complicated and we're not going to do anything. And that's part of what we try to do at 1% for the Planet, is kind of set ourselves apart from some of that mess and to be like, the model is simple. Like, you do business on the planet, you use our resources, you should be paying a tax to do that and be committing to 1%, and be maintaining that commitment over the lifetime of your business. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was a little confused in some of those different sub organizations, but like when you are 1% for the Planet, you choose what organizations you're going to donate to. So it's like climate neutral. That's one of the organizations that you're contributing to. So that logo's on there as well, but it's all starting at 1% and getting funneled to the, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so every single business member is designing their own giving strategy and partnerships. Our only criteria is that the donations have to go directly to an improved environmental partner in our network that we vet. And we support all of that, but every single business is different in how they're deciding on where their money goes, which can be overwhelming at times because everyone's 1% kind of looks a little bit differently, but as much as it's overwhelming, it's like the most inspiring part of it.
Do you guys currently track what percentage of the S&P 500 is a 1% client? Is it like, if you do track it, what percentage would that be of the S&P 500?
There are very few publicly traded companies that are part of the network. And the two that come to mind are Helen of Troy, which owns OXO, and then Samsonite, which owns Tumi. Both are members. And I think it sends a pretty powerful message when legacy brands can also make the commitment. But I think one of the reasons why we don't have publicly traded companies in the network so much is I think there is too much bureaucracy and red tape, and there's too much shareholder pleasing and not planet pleasing. And it's not definitely a case where it cannot happen. I think it's more of a choice.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things shift when the government starts to have a hand in greenwashing legislation, like I mentioned, that's happening in the EU, when it becomes more of a risk. What businesses will see things like this as more of like a we have to have versus like we want to just do the right thing.
We have a question back there. You. I was going to ask, do you ever have instances where companies use 1% of the plan as sort of a greenwashing front? Like maybe they're willing to forego the 1%, but they're making a hell of a lot more damage monetarily. Do you have checks and balances in place to ensure?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because we're super focused on the giving part. So when it comes to their 1% commitment that they're making and they're giving, any single member that you would search in our directory, they're actually certifying that impact. But like we mentioned, when you look at all those business members, they're all on kind of a different spot in terms of their overarching sustainability journey. So you do have business members in the network that may have a greater negative environmental impact than others. What we hope is that by kind of welcoming them into the party a little bit, that they're learning from each other and getting better. So we have some great examples in the network. One that comes to mind is Sunski, the sunglasses company. And when they first joined, when you're looking at the materials that they use to make their sunglasses, it wasn't great. And funnily enough, they were at a 1% for the Planet Global Summit and had the opportunity to meet Yvon Chouinard, and he called them out directly and said, you have to do better here. But then through the inspiration and the open sourcing and just being part of a network of a bunch of businesses that were trying to do better, fast forward to today, and they make a much better product in terms of like their environmental impact or footprint. So I think people that work in the space will have different philosophical opinions, and you guys can challenge me on this, but if we want to get to where we want to go in terms of a better future, we're not just going to be able to like lock all the bad guys up and say, sorry, like business is closed, you know? Like I'm much more like, let's invite them to the party, let them in, like, and inspire them to do better and like hold them accountable as they're there. So, but that's, you know, a hard thing to hold, you know, like we're all trying to do better. You know, Art mentioned like sleeping at night in terms of products out in the world, like it's hard, but it's that like progress over perfection piece that I think is super important.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say is like, we talked about this earlier, is like, I don't think there's a lot of companies out there that are just like, oh, we can pull one over and donate 1% of our profits, and like, no one is out there like trying to do bad. Like it's just very hard in some cases to reduce if a core part of your business is doing something that is like has some dirty laundry on it, which is everything, frankly. You know, I think it's admirable. Like you know, you run up the Chevron thing, and it's like an interesting like taking it to the extreme. It's like, well, like the world needs this stuff for now. Like, you know, like does that mean that they shouldn't be allowed to like participate in it? Like you can make it. It's an interesting philosophical thing.
Definitely.
So on the other end of the spectrum, of the partners that are sustainability partners, one of the best ways to save the planet is to not consume, period. Just don't buy it, don't use it, don't make, you know. So I'm curious, in all those partners, is anyone, for example, and this is a bit of a thought experiment, pay consumers or pay, you know, retail, the people that buy things to not consume? In other words, is there any one of those partners is like, look, if you don't buy a car this year, we'll give you $100.
That in itself is an interesting model. I don't have like an example at the top of my head. Like consumerism is something that a lot of environmental partners in our network tackle, where they do lots of advocacy campaigns and in some ways incentivize encouraging people to use less. And it's actually a pretty popular impact area. Actually, if you have a kind of case study top of mind.
Yeah, I think one example of that reduce, reuse, recycle, the first part is Patagonia. A few years ago, they did a campaign, a full one-page ad in the New York Times, and it had one of their like prominent classic jackets, and they kind of did the caption said, "Don't buy this." And the idea was that to reduce and ideally don't tap into consumerism. But if you decide to buy a product, this product is designed to last longer, so you will have less of a need to buy more. And that's one of the great things about Peak Design is they have a marketplace that they launched a few years ago where people can resell existing Peak Design products. And so far, I think they've sold like more than 30,000 such products just among each other, and how much landfill that's prevented and not tap into the consumerism aspect. So a lot of ways to innovate in that.
Do you also repair product if it comes in?
We can, for certain products we do. I mean, we do a lot of like repackaging and fixing small things and stuff via third-party suppliers, but at a certain point, like, I think it's important to realize, like, so like you were talking about the marketplace thing, like, we did the marketplace specifically for that reason. It's like there's third-party marketplaces exist out there, and they like what's the most efficient way that we can get people to use them without like sending them like off our like you know, like what's the most efficient way that we can encourage that and make sure that it's going well on the consumer level, and we can like track feedback and make sure there's like not like sketchy players out there and stuff like that. And it was like doing it ourselves, and like we did a lot of business calculations on like, oh, we could lose a lot of money on this. In reality, it's like someone buying a used backpack. By the way, it's not us selling the used stuff. Like there's a lot of marketplaces out there. Like I think the like Arc'teryx and Patagonia ones are, Arc'teryx is taking return products that they repair and then resell them. So they're taking on they make the money when they resell it. It's sort of interesting, we get to sell the product multiple times. I gotta do some calculations on that, it's kind of a fun thing. But ours, it's peer-to-peer. So some of it is ours where it's like open box returns and stuff like that, but a lot of it is peer-to-peer. So we don't see any money in transactions. So you have the potential to go from selling someone a $250 backpack to someone giving that money to someone else. It's potentially pretty impactful, but we haven't really found it to be. It's kind of hard to tell annual growth numbers and stuff like that, but you had brought up the repairing thing. Our products the camera bags are particularly difficult to repair because of the way they're built with all the foam and everything like that. Some of our products we can repair, but a lot of them, they're tricky. And it's a lot of our work and future product stuff we're doing is repairability. Yeah.
We have a question. Okay. I wanted to respond to add Patagonia ad. I think there's a lot of dispute about what the intentions of that ad were. Because they directly say it's the Manchester. And I think a lot of people thought it was a kind of yeah, I'm so we have to really use that as an example.
Yeah, no, that's super fair feedback, and it's interesting to see what the intentions of something like that could be, and the control that you have as a brand in terms of what that's going to cause. And it's that, I think, fine line that any business is trying to find when trying to communicate that story and share that brand message, and to see what works and what doesn't. And I think something like that is something that they've probably asked themselves those hard questions too, and challenge themselves to do better. And there's a lot of resale marketplaces within the 1% for Planet network in terms of businesses. So we do attract businesses that are themselves trying to solve a core issue, which is really interesting. And then in addition to the work that they're doing, I'm blanking on the name of the business member in the UK, but they focus on reselling refurbished phones and then work with an environmental partner in our network called the Restart Project that focuses on doing trainings and community education, and they do these awesome workshops and pop-ups all around the UK for people to come in and fix their tech and learn how to do it themselves. So it's cool to see some of those problems being solved within the network through those partnerships.
I believe that's very valid. I have one more
Maybe.
last question. Please, Helen Maria. That was really interesting. I always think about designers, especially industrial designers, being pretty savvy consumers, right? Because not only are they looking at it is that good design? Does that really work? Can I make that better? But also trying to think about can it be recycled? Can it be repaired? Is it quality design? But we still don't know if it's the right thing to buy, right? There's so many questions. And I think I guess the question I have is about certification. It's I understand why that works, because it allows me to know something as both a consumer and a designer about what that company is doing with its product. But is that enough? It's still not helping me really make good decisions. I'm still buying things that go in landfill that are not. What else can happen? What more can happen between design and then organizations like you work together?
I think consumer to consumer education is super interesting. So much has changed in the world of information technology in the past few years. Even peer-to-peer knowledge sharing on social media. I think there's a lot happening in that space and a lot more that can be done. Yeah, it's a good question. I think part of what needs to be untapped is working within the entire ecosystem. Everyone has to kind of be working together to try and create those types of solutions, because it's probably not going to take
one organization trying to solve that problem in one corner of the world who's going to like solve it and grow globally and make that huge impact. Like it's going to take like a network of not-for-profit organizations, a network of businesses, government intervention, policy change, like activists and advocacy, like, and it's all those people trying to figure out what like that right solution is and to get on the same page. And I think we, in the work that we do, see some of those tensions sometimes, and people like wrestle with that and try to get closer and closer to getting on that same page. But I'm personally inspired by like the way that people are educating each other as consumers, and especially like the younger generation. Like I didn't experience that when I was like in my like late teens and early 20s. Like, so I think it can make a huge difference. So just a small part of answering your question.
There's a designer in the back. Do you want to ask?
Yeah, one question. Are there like any volunteer opportunities for like students to get involved with sustainability? As I feel like in school it is talked about, but we kind of want to push for that sustainable environment. So are there any opportunities or involvement that students can get into?
One thing that I'd recommend, or two things. One, our directory is accessible through our website, so it's not something that's just exclusive to members. So you can use our directory to search different environmental partners all around the world, and we have a really helpful map, so you can like zoom in on the Bay Area and kind of check out what organizations and like what impact area are doing what. So for example, if you're really passionate about like indigenous land rights and nature access, and you are here in the Bay and you use our directory, like Sogorea Land Trust might come up, and they have like awesome opportunities to get involved for like the land back movement here in the Bay. So directory is one. There's also Patagonia Action Works. So that's a platform through Patagonia where it's a similar directory, but it's all of their grantees through their 1% for the Planet commitment. You can again search by location, and it'll come up with a list not only of like organizations' names, but also like advocacy, more like activist-oriented opportunities to sign petitions or go to rallies. The other really cool part of the platform is that there's skilled volunteer opportunities. So those grantees or organizations may put out a request to help them with something they just need extra volunteer support with, especially like post-pandemic. A lot of nonprofit organizations are looking for that kind of skilled volunteering because they had to lay off people during the pandemic and are still trying to like build that up. So that's a really cool way to like apply like what you're learning in school and do that skilled volunteer, and just really good like professional development, because you can kind of get your hands in on a project where you really be able to learn a lot and throw that on as a good like work experience when you're applying for jobs and things like that.
I'm sorry, this thing, I don't know if everybody else, but it didn't work.
Oh, okay.
So what is the actual website?
It's 1%fortheplanet.org, all spelled out.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for all the questions. I have one final question, and that is, what would you like to say, or what advice would you give if you were to go back to school today and re-educate, or what is the gap that you felt you had in your education that could put yourself in a position where you could be a better advocate, a better designer? I know you've hired one of our CCA designers a few years ago, and she's at your team now. What advice would you give if you were to go back to school, or to these students who are really in their design career, whether it's nonprofit or design? What could you change about your education? What advice would you give?
I'll share from my perspective and then pass it on to you. My undergrad, I majored in political science, and then my master's was in public policy and administration. And the time, nonprofit work, government-oriented work was like the path for me to create change, and I got jaded very, very quickly. I was doing some like relief aid work early in my career, and there was just tons and tons of red tape. I explored academia for a while, went back to do my PhD, then got frustrated that my research sat on a shelf. And so I was like trying to figure out like, how am I going to create change? And it wasn't until I connected with the certified B Corp and 1% for the Planet community down in Australia where I was living as I was pursuing my PhD that I felt like I had found a bunch of people that had the resources and just like the sense of agency to just like get things done. And I really resonated with that. And back when I was in school, like, did not hang out with the people who had a business degree, like would have never considered that as a pathway. So if I could go back to myself, it would be to just like consider that as a space where there was like a lot of change happening, that if like I had that sense of urgency, I could like find people that could like actually make things happen.
Oh, man. Just, I guess, putting myself into design student shoes, like the projects that I picked to try and land a job out of school, I think I probably would have specialized more so that there were some common threads in my portfolio and I had like some depth of expertise. Because as someone who like hires new designers and interns and stuff like that, it's like very hard to get a sense of a designer's capabilities and personal style and approach to design when all the projects are all over the place. That's like a very nuts and bolts classic design student portfolio feedback kind of a thing, but I'm going to take that route.
Thank you.
Super relevant.
One thing for me in college was I'd get frustrated a lot because we were always talking about the problems but not the solutions. And I kind of got the sense that I'm not allowed to ask, and now what? What are we going to do about it? But the majority of the class was just talking about the problem. So I think if I could go back, I would give myself permission to go beyond that and try to look for more solutions as well and create a culture where we feel empowered to pursue it. And then after college, I think not being afraid to take a different path, like just follow your instinct, follow your nose, trust what your voice is telling you, and eventually, like I said earlier, all rivers will lead to the sea and you'll find your way. Just have a little faith.